Teresia has been at Celgene for 11 years, and during her time there has provided a broad level of counsel and support on general business transactions and other corporate matters globally. Prior to joining Celgene, Teresia was an associate at Sedgwick, Detert, Moran, and Arnold, now Sedgwick in Newark, New Jersey, where her practice focused on providing counsel and support on general business transactions and other corporate legal matters. Thanks, Teresia, for being with us today.
Thank you so much for having me. So I decided I was going to just kind of give you guys some insight on the experience of a pharmaceutical transactional lawyer and kind of give you some nuggets of some of the things I've worked on in my time at Celgene and just generally some of the things we work on. I'm just going to use my PowerPoint to kind of guide my discussion, but I'll obviously take questions or comments whenever you guys feel like you'd like to know something more. I also will give you just some insight on a legal department in a pharmaceutical company. I'm not sure if any of you all are currently working in the pharma space, so you may already be familiar, although sometimes the legal department is kind of a foreign entity to the rest of the organization. So within the legal group, we have patent attorneys who help us file patents for our drugs, for our ideas. We also have litigators who help defend us if there's lawsuits. They file lawsuits if they feel like we've been wronged. They also help represent us when there's government investigations. And we also have regulatory attorneys. Regulatory attorneys will usually help with our FDA label when we're negotiating with the FDA after we've had some successful clinical trials. They'll help negotiate with the FDA or Health Canada or other health authorities around the world to get approval for our products and a certain indication for certain therapies. They also do a lot of promotional review. So once we do have a label, they help our business folks and marketing folks to figure out how do we best promote our product, and they help them stay within the compliance lines of the regulations that we have to follow through the FDA with how we promote our products. So there's also transactional lawyers, which I kind of fall into, and transactional lawyers can work on anything from M&A deals to clinical trials to commercial agreements. We also have corporate attorneys who manage our corporate governance. Because Celgene is a publicly traded company, they work with our SEC filings with the Securities and Exchange Commission, so those are that's kind of the different types of attorneys we have in the legal group. So since I've been at Celgene, I've worked on a number of different agreements and different things, but I figured I'd start from like the whole phase of drug development, just to give you an idea. And then the associated agreements related to the development of products. So phases of drug development start with in vivo or preclinical research, and for those we usually do material transfer agreements or research agreements where we basically are giving like an investigator access to a small amount of our drug, so they can kind of do some studies either in mice or just kind of break it apart and figure out what it's made of and what it can do. But the goals for a material transfer agreement or a research agreement is always that we have to protect any IP that we believe we already have in the product, but also any additional IP that may be derived from the research that the researcher is doing. We also want to make sure we have access to the data that comes from that research. So we have to negotiate strong data rights to the agreement, and publication rights. So usually these investigators want to publish information that they found or discovered. So we also want to have a right before they can publish that we review it, and if we want to redact anything that we feel is confidential or proprietary, we don't want it out in the public domain yet, because we still haven't filed our appropriate rights to it. So we want to make sure that we have those rights to do that. So that's kind of how we start off. And then, when we go from kind of in vivo preclinical to the clinical phase. Clinical phases start from phase 1 to phase 4. Phase 1 is usually healthy subjects who don't have any of the diseases we're thinking about. They're healthy subjects, and we just want to see how are our products how are they affecting when humans are using them. Because prior to this, we've only done animal studies and things like that. So there usually has to be obviously monitoring, a protocol that's written, and we have to also have consent for the patients or the subjects who are entering into the trials at any phase. So those are kind of the documents that I would review to make sure that for informed consent, basically we have to make sure we have the right for the subject to have them participate in the trial, but we inform them that it's not like they're going to see their regular doctor. They won't have access to the data that comes out of that. It'll come to us, and we have rights to it, and we have the right to use that data to file for indications with the proper regulatory authorities. We also have to ensure them that if, in the event they have any side effects, that they let their physician or their investigator know, so that we can make sure we have a safe transition off the drug, or whatever they need to take and supplement to the drug to make sure it's not making them sick. So those are kind of the things that our informed consent will also will cover. We have a new product. Well, it's been around for a couple of years now, Otezla, which is a drug for psoriatic arthritis and psoriasis. And the informed consents we did for those trials also asked the patient to give us the right to take their photo, so we could see baseline what their skin looked like before they started taking the medication, and then at certain intervals during the trial. And then we wanted to be able to use those, for our filings with regulatory authorities, or even if we wanted to use that for marketing if it was successful. So that was kind of a new twist. That was interesting to try to figure out how we get that, how we address that. And then we have contracts with the sites. So when we are rolling out clinical trials, we will look for investigators who are physicians, clinicians, and working for certain hospitals mostly, who already have experience in certain types of disease state, if it's the one we're studying. And we'll basically go out and ask them if they're interested in participating in our trial, if they think that they can find the right patients, and enough patients that fit kind of the patient dynamics that we look for, and if they think they can enroll the patients to have the trial at their institution. So we have to negotiate with the sites, which are mostly these medical institutions or universities, medical universities, and obviously we want to make sure, again, like we did in the MTAs and research agreements, make sure that we have the rights to the IP. We obviously say that we own the drug, and then we also own any rights to any data that comes out of the trial, or any new or patentable information that comes out of the trial as well. And so, then there's also insurance. So what happens if, something happens to a patient during the trial? We also make sure that the institution has insurance, we have insurance. There's indemnification language that we have to address to make sure that there's some shared liability, depending on what may happen, that it's not all of our responsibility and it's not all of the institution's responsibility, but we try to negotiate a shared responsibility based on, who might be the person at fault or the company at fault. And in addition to site contracts, there's a number of vendor contracts that happen, especially for these very huge multi-center, multinational trials that go on, where we have like hundreds and hundreds of centers all over the world. So it's hard for the company to manage those all themselves. So we hire contract research organizations, which are called CROs. And the CROs are good because they usually have the resources. They know that they know what sites are available, where there's investigators who are very have great knowledge in certain areas. They also kind of know, how to run a trial, so they can help these clinical sites recruit patients. They also can manage like the data that comes out of the trials. Or we can hire a data vendor. So there's also contracts with those organizations that help us manage the clinical trials. There's also kind of a few years back, these organizations that started popping up to help subject recruitment. Sometimes it's really hard to recruit subjects and to find people who have the diseases that you're looking for. How do you get these people? How do you inform them? So sometimes we'll ask doctors if we can put, if they can start, maybe surveying some of their patients to say, would you be interested in a trial? Because you have this disease, I'm going to be doing a trial on this disease. Would you be interested? But then there's also these things that, these little pop-ups you see on Facebook or on your computer. You'll see a pop-up and you'll see, do you have psoriatic arthritis? If so, this trial might be right for you. You click on it and you go through a whole program to just find out certain information about you to see if you would potentially be an eligible person to be included in a trial. So that's subject recruitment. So that's a whole nother space that, we have to negotiate those kinds of contracts with those organizations. There's also some trials that have devices where the subject has to input, on a daily basis or weekly basis. Like, I've been taking my medication every day at this time, and, when I take it, I feel like this. When I don't take it, I feel like this. When I get up in the morning, I feel like this. So, and these devices are, the information that they put in is going to a central location so that we have kind of some sense of a day-to-day usage of the product. So that's another contract that we would have to negotiate is the companies that make these devices that track, the information and the technology that's there. So those can be a little tricky because the devices are obviously, there's technology in the device that helps us read the information or translate the information that the patient puts in there. But then we also want to make sure we own it because they're putting it in there about our product. So that those can be usually a little bit more tenuous negotiations, but we usually, find a happy medium between both. But those are just some of the contracts that are related to clinical trial development that I thought I would share. So the next area is similar to clinical development, which is medical affairs. So our medical affairs department, they actually will manage kind of information that they handle unsolicited requests. So if somebody has a parent or a friend or somebody who they know has a certain disease and they want information about a drug that we have, they can solicit the medical affairs department. The medical affairs group also works with physicians and investigators who approach us and they say, I live, in a rural area in the United States, and I'm starting to get a lot of patients who come in who have these similar symptoms and similar issues, and I'm just wondering if there's something out there that we can do for them, or maybe there's an area we can research. So sometimes physicians will approach us to say, hey, are you interested in doing a trial or supporting me to do a trial for a certain patient population? And so, we evaluate it. We have the investigator draft the protocol and then propose it to us. And then we kind of investigate, whether we think it's something that's strategically aligned with kind of our mission and our programs, or if it's something that we just think it might be a good thing to do. So we can, if we approve sponsoring that, then we will either give that physician free drug or access to free drug for his patients, or that the patients that enroll in the trial, or we'll sponsor him, we'll give him some money to help defray the cost of the trial. So it's a little similar, it's just that we don't write the protocol, but we do actually also ask for the physician to provide us access to the data, rights to use the data. We obviously negotiate the IP that's developed from there. We usually will ask that they own it, but they give us a full license back to it. So even though they have the rights to it, they can't do anything with it, basically. We ask that we have the full rights to license it if it's something we're interested in, so that we can use it to further to do further research, or if we think that there's an indication that could come from there that we can use our product. So that's kind of our medical affairs. One of the other things that comes from medical affairs, and I used to do quite a lot of privacy from at Celgene, is, and when we get these unsolicited requests, sometimes somebody will just call and start just giving a lot of information. So we need to make sure that first of all, we inform them that, we want to help you, but we're taking this information in order to do X, Y, Z. We may, save it in our archives and look at it later or have somebody contact you, but we have to have appropriate consent. So whether it's in the US, so it's a HIPAA related consent, or if it's ex-US and it's, European privacy laws or whatever. So we have to make sure, and sometimes people will type in things on our website, so we have to have kind of these disclaimers. So that also falls within the transactional attorney's role, is creating the right disclaimers and informing anyone who's soliciting us how we might use their information. So that's kind of medical affairs. I mentioned publications. So publications can come out of the early stage preclinical work. Obviously, publications come out of our clinical trial work, and then publications will come out of the investigator-initiated. If they are related to clinical research, where it was basically Celgene came up with a protocol, Celgene paid for all the costs of the trial, then we'll usually solicit certain of the physicians who were involved in the trial to actually work as a group to create publications. But they basically, they will publish it, they'll draft it, we have a chance to review it, a right to review it again, redact anything we think is too confidential or too proprietary, but then, they want to also have an opportunity to publish in areas that they want to publish. So those are authorship agreements that we will agree to, we'll draft as to who has the rights to do what with the information that's come out of the trial. So the next phase, if we've had success with our clinical trials, is we have to actually now manufacture. So prior to the trial, there is a manufacturing phase, but it's clinical manufacturing. So we have clinical grade of the product that we need to use in patients. Once we have determined that we've been successful in the clinical trials, we filed with the FDA, they've approved the label for us, then we have to do manufacturing of commercial grade products. So we enter into different agreements with different manufacturing companies, development agreements. We look for manufacturers who have great technology to help us create the product and manufacture the product that meets our quality standards and also meets the health authority standards. And then so we have the API, which is the main ingredients of the product, and then we have any other finishing products that go into that, and then there's always bottles and packaging, and then there's labels, right? So those are all different agreements that we have to enter into for the manufacturing process. And these are usually where global agreements, depending on where we find the manufacturer that we think could do the best work. Also has the high capacity that we need if we are ready to launch, and we want to make sure we have enough product based on the research we've done and how many patients we believe are available and are ready to use this product. So you need to make sure we have manufacturers that can ramp up pretty quickly and have the breadth to manufacture the product. And then after that, we have to commercialize the product. So with the commercialization comes a few different things for promotion. So as you all probably already know, the pharmaceutical industry is very highly regulated everywhere in the U.S. and every other country. But in the U.S., there's the FDA, there's Health Canada in Canada, and then there's other European health authorities. But all of them have pretty specific requirements on how to promote a product once it's been approved for use. And from a transactional perspective, there's a few different ways that we can promote our product. One way is we will sometimes solicit a lot of the same investigators and physicians who help do the clinical trial, because they have more familiarity with the product and how it's worked, and they kind of also saw the patients on a daily basis, so they got to see how patients with certain other issues, how the product affected them. So we actually will gather or we'll solicit a few of those investigators to see if they're interested in participating in something we call a speakers bureau. So speakers bureau programs are where we hire physicians, or actually it could be nurses, healthcare practitioners. So physicians, nurses, and we ask them if they'll be trained, if we can train them on the appropriate label that we have approved. So we can only do things that are on label, right? So the label that's approved, the science behind the product, and then also the information we've discovered during the whole research phase of the product. And we train these healthcare professionals on the use of our products, and then we basically send them out, and we'll schedule different meetings for them to meet with community physicians, or physicians that people are going to just walk into their offices and start asking for the product, and they train these community physicians on the product, and that actually has helped. It's kind of a peer-to-peer education, which we found has been really effective. That doctors like to rely on their peers to understand product and get a medical understanding of things. So that's one of the things that fall in a transactional attorney space, is negotiating the speakers program, right? Speaker programs with the physicians, or if these physicians are part of these large cancer institutions or medical institutions, or these huge medical universities like Mount Sinai and Cedar Sinai and MD Anderson and all these really large ones. So we negotiate the contracts for those physicians to participate in our speakers bureau. We also do different things with sometimes a group of physicians called advisory boards or steering committees, where we will ask, after the drug has been kind of used in the market for a while, we'll ask physicians, to kind of meet together and let us know how are patients responding to the product. What are some of the issues that you've seen? How have you been advising patients on how to manage some of these issues that are coming up? And then so they start kind of talking amongst themselves and giving us some indication on how our product is doing out there in the market, and advising us, have you guys thought about recommending that, something as simple as a patient eat, something before they take the drug, or a lot of patients are complaining that they get tired after they take the drug. So have you thought about recommending that people take it at night? And these are things that aren't necessarily in the label, but these are things that are just helpful in the administration of the product. And then they'll also talk about, patients that they have with certain specific issues that, may have some other comorbidities. So like, a patient has renal failure, if they're taking this medication, I've realized that they have a hard time XYZ. Oh yeah, I would recommend this patient take something before they take it. So those are the kinds of, and it's really great to sit in those to really see, because, you understand, it helps you understand when you're negotiating the contract, kind of some of the things that come up. So those are other things that I do. Also, part of the promotional aspect for promoting products is sometimes we hire celebrities to do campaigns for us to kind of get the word out. So there's commercials, and then there's some celebrities who do these commercials, right? But then there's also, celebrities who just now that we have all this social media, they'll tweet, or they'll put on their Facebook page something about, a product, and they're being paid for that, right? So we negotiate the agreements with these celebrities to say, you'll work on, we want you to work on this campaign. We ask you to do so many tweets, within this time frame, we'll pay you for this, and they'll be on the news with a doctor talking about their own issue with that type of disease. And, so those are other agreements we've done, or I've done at Celgene for commercializing our product. And then there's commercials. So we have a new product, Otezla, which I don't know if you guys have seen the commercials.
I have seen the commercials.
So, and it's great because prior to Otezla, we didn't have commercials because it's a cancer drug. So patients aren't very active in looking for themselves for cancer therapies. They really rely on their physicians, hematologists, and oncologists. So it's been fun watching the whole new path of Otezla. So Yeah, jumping into the water. So it was, it was funny. When we first had the first draft of that, our CEO said, "It feels too much like a Viagra commercial. We got to change that." So just kind of insight. But so what I've done with commercials is I've negotiated talent agreements with actors and actresses who are going to be in our commercials with the talent guilds, and then also licensing agreements for the music that we're using. The Otezla commercial has the "Walking on Sunshine" song in the background, so we just finished renewing, because the commercial's been around for a little while, but renewing our license for that. So that's another thing that you work on as a transactional attorney. Also, when we do have the commercials, working with our advertising agencies to purchase the space on the network. So, we just pay the networks a certain amount of money, and then that way we can have certain spots at certain times that we found has been more beneficial where more people are watching TV, or on the web as well. So I've negotiated some of those as well. And then advertising agency agreements where we've negotiated. We have quite a few agencies who support us in different ways and for different products, but they come up with, they pitch all these different ideas to us on how to market our products better, how to promote our products better. So I negotiate those agreements, and those are always a little challenging because advertisers are always they don't want to give you any rights to anything until you've paid them in full. But the issue is what they're working on, we're giving them our confidential information, our proprietary information to work on that. So you can't own that because that's our IP. So kind of, coming up with the negotiating, making sure that, no, we don't have to wait till we pay you because it includes our confidential information. And so working those things out. So those are always interesting.
Yeah.
So after we promote and commercialize and manufacture, then we need to get our products out there. So we have to enter into agreements with wholesalers, with distributors, with pharmacies. Right now at Celgene, all of our products go through specialty pharmacies, which are kind of like mail order, but they provide additional services, especially for our cancer products, which we have to make sure that our patients, physicians, and pharmacies are registered in a certain program so that we can keep track of who's getting our products. Just because of some of the safety concerns around some of our cancer products, with
Side effects?
Birth defects. I know the word, I just said it. Birth defects. So we need to make sure that people are taking it responsibly, and that, if you're a female of childbearing potential, you have to have pregnancy tests on a regular basis, or if you're a male who's involved with a female of childbearing potential, you have to use certain types of contraception. So those are pretty rigid. So we have to make sure that our pharmacies are aware of what those requirements are. So we train our pharmacies on those requirements to make sure that they're counseling patients, they're checking with patients, weekly, to make sure that they're getting their blood tests, they're getting information from the physician, they're following up with our patients, because also in addition to the birth defects, they have all other side effects, neuropathy and some other things. So they need to just understand how the patient is handling some of the side effects, or if they're having them. So we go through specialty pharmacies because we just don't think that, you can walk up to a freestanding, CVS or Walgreens and just, get your prescription and walk away. So those are pretty intense negotiations. We also usually negotiate, there's certain services that those pharmacies already provide, but we will usually pay them extra to do these other services that are specific to our product. We also, part of those agreements also are, we want the data from them. So we want to know how many patients how many prescriptions are you filling on a monthly basis? What are the patient dynamics? We don't get the personal health information of the patient. We'll just get, that it's a female who's 50, and we'll get a zip code for a prescription. and then we'll get the information of the doctor, who was the physician who wrote the prescription. And that helps us to understand who's using our product. So that's something that's part of the specialty pharmacy agreement. The wholesaler and distributors they're pretty basic agreements on, you'll buy X amount and we'll give, for X amount of dollars. And after you purchase, this much, we'll give you this kind of discount or rebate. And then we also pay the wholesalers and distributors for certain services that they provide, for the administration of, keeping track of the product for us, sending us the data. We sold, 20 shipments to this specialty pharmacy this date, so they send us that kind of information in detail as well. And then because we have also agreements with certain physician practices and physician networks, because we do have a product called Abraxane that is in vitro. So it's administered at the doctor's office. So we sell directly to the doctor. So we have agreements with either the physician offices or the networks that these physicians are part of, and how, that they'll purchase at a certain amount. We can't give them volume discounts because it's because of the anti-kickback statute. But anyway, we also have negotiations and have contracts directly with physician offices and practices. Anybody have any questions before I continue?
Feel free. You can also put it on chat. No? Okay. All right.
I actually had a question about the MD offices agreements that you were just talking about with the Abraxane. Do you have to involve CMS or any kind of payers in those sorts of negotiations, or is it all done through the MD office or the MD network?
So we don't have to involve them, but we do have, so CMS and HHS, we have very strict regulations, right? And the anti-kickback statute and how we offer these prices to physicians, fraud and abuse. So we have compliance that we have to manage or at least take into consideration in drafting and negotiating with these. But the payer contracts is what I was going to get to next, actually. So rebates and reimbursement. So this is fairly new for Celgene. This is a new space. It's not new in the industry, but it's a new space for Celgene because we found that most insurance companies will pay for a cancer patient to get their product, right? So that's a life-saving therapy. And so most of the time, we don't have to worry about an insurance company approving the use of a product for cancer. Even if it's off-label. There's a lot of hematologists and oncologists who, know there's a lot of different cancers out there, and there's not treatments for everyone, but they're researchers, and they'll determine, this product was tested in this, and these were some of the outcomes, so I think this might help for this type of cancer. So there's a lot of off-use. Obviously, we don't promote for that. But insurance companies usually don't have a problem with reimbursing or paying a patient's cost. Now, they might not pay it all, right? So a patient still has quite a bit of out-of-pocket. And Celgene, as many other companies, we have some good patient access programs where we help patients defray the cost of their products and their therapies. But with this new product, Otezla, which is not life-saving, right? It's, it's transformational for psoriasis patients and psoriatic arthritis patients. But we found ourselves in a new space where we actually have to, first and foremost, get access to these formularies, right? So they're insurance companies or payers or pharmacy benefit managers who have like a number of plans, like Blue Cross, right? Blue Cross is a pharmacy benefit manager. They have several different, states, different Blue Cross of California, New Jersey, where they manage these plans. And so basically what we do is we negotiate with them, and we'll say, for every prescription of Otezla that you reimburse, so we sell to the pharmacies fill the prescription, and then the pharmacies go back to, before they fill the prescription, they'll do something called a benefits and verification. So they'll see, this patient's coming here with this prescription. Let me see what kind of insurance this patient has, right? So they'll check the insurance. They'll see if the insurance requires any kind of authorization first, like do you have to have had, some other letter from your doctor? Does this insurance company require first that you've used another medicine before they'll allow you to use this one, which is called step therapy. And so they'll do that, and then they'll see, okay, we can this will be reimbursed by your insurance company. Your copay is, $15, $20, $100. But on the back end of that, basically pharmaceutical companies negotiate with payers and PBMs to say, for every prescription that you pay for your members, we'll offer you 10%, 15% off, for that, so that they're not fulfilling the full cost of it. And then obviously the member, who's the patient, also has some obligation either through their copay or they have to meet, that donut hole first. And so we also offer patient assistance where if the copay is significantly high, then we'll offer a copay assistance so the patient will not have to pay the full cost of their copay. So they'll pay, a fraction of it or maybe nothing, depending on their situation. But what we're doing when we negotiate with these payers is not only offering them reimbursement from them having to pay the full cost of the product, but we're also seeking to get formulary access. So we're seeking for our product to be an approved product by their company so that when patients show up with a prescription to a pharmacy, that our product is an approved product to be reimbursed. And as I mentioned before, step therapy, which is, there's been a lot of stuff in the media lately with step therapy, because these insurance companies are getting larger rebates from some companies. So they put those companies as those products as their preferred product. And if you come with a prescription for another product that's not preferred, then the patient has to first try and fail that other product before they can get approved to be reimbursed for this other product. So since we're kind of new man on the ground, we're trying to get formulary access, and we have some pretty hefty competitors who have much broader labels than we do. So right now, Celgene Otezla has 2 approved labels, which is psoriatic arthritis and psoriasis, where our competitors have a broad range of therapies that they're approved for. So, of course, their market share is much different than ours because they have a lot more indications that they're being prescribed for, and they're offering much bigger rebates. And so, and which rebates that it's hard for us to compete with because 1, we're new, 2, we have a smaller label, and our product's much cheaper than theirs. So it's been a challenge, but so part of that is formulary access to say, we'll offer you X amount of percentage off for each product, each prescription that you reimburse in exchange for formulary access, with no step edits, because, we believe Otezla is a great product and shouldn't be stepped through first with biologics. And then another thing that's part of that rebate agreement is something called price predictability, right? So as I'm sure all of you know, drug prices increase over time. And so what we will commit is, we'll usually take, 2, 3, 4 price increases over the course of a year. But what we'll commit to the payer is that, we will only, we'll only go up, we'll limit our price increases to a certain percentage so that they don't have to worry about the increase in prices as they begin to continue to reimburse. So those are kind of the aspects of those agreements for rebates and reimbursement, which we also do negotiate with the government as well for Medicare Part D, which is the prescription plan, Medicaid, which is usually with individual states, and then with the VA. So with the VA, we negotiate not only reimbursement, but also we negotiate access to our products because veterans have different pharmacies that they go through to get our products. So we negotiate with them, and basically we're negotiating to have access to those pharmacies to say, we have veterans who are suffering from these different diseases, they need access. We'll sell you our products for this reduced amount to make sure that our veterans have access to our therapies. So that's kind of the reimbursement rebate space. So another thing that transactional attorneys kind of get involved in are drafting of policies and procedures and training. And I've had my share of them since I've been at Celgene. But, you have internal policies, right, that people who work for the company have to be governed by. And then you have something called SOPs, which are standards of procedures, which may not necessarily be a policy, but will tell you how to do something if you need to get it done. We get involved with either drafting or working with our clients if they decide to draft an SOP for their group, and reviewing it from a legal perspective to make sure that there's compliance with it, and that that it makes sense, and and then we develop and implement training. So one of the things that I did several years ago was with regard to drug safety. So because Celgene is a global organization, we have to follow the most stringent laws, right, wherever we're located globally. And the European Union has the most stringent privacy laws, as well as pharmacovigilance, right, which is drug safety. And so even when we're negotiating with pharmacies here in the U.S., we have to hold them to the standards of Europe, European pharmacovigilance and drug safety, because when we're audited by the European regulatory authorities, they're looking at all of our contracts globally. And so it's challenging sometimes negotiating with these pharmacies, especially if it's like a little mom and pop pharmacy, in Louisiana. They're like, why do we care, But it's like, well, unfortunately, but the European regulators came up with certain criteria that they said should be required in contracts with pharmaceutical companies for drug safety, right? So for reporting adverse events, for identifying adverse events. And so we had to kind of understand the regulation and then create a training for not only our internal Celgene folks who are requesting contracts with pharmacies, with physicians, with different things, that we have to let them know, okay, because this contract is with this type of entity, and it's usually based on how closely connected to our patient population, right, is that entity. So if it's a physician, if it's a pharmacy, they're having direct access to patients, which means they likely will be the ones that a patient will say, hey, you know what, I took this product and I had a really bad headache like an hour later. Well, that's an adverse event. Yeah. We need to understand that. So, the drafting of a policy around, or a procedure around what kinds of language needs to be in our contracts, and how do we train the vendors and the people internally within Celgene. And then we also participate in compliance audits. So we have internal audits as well that we do, our compliance team, and depending on the business units that we support, we are actively involved in those, as well as regulatory authorities who do investigations. So we usually will get involved in those as well. That's pretty much it. That's pretty much the types of things that transactional attorneys at pharmaceutical companies get involved in, from soup to nuts.
Wow, so, that's a really broad spectrum.
It really is.
I had no idea.
Yeah. I didn't even touch on everything, but
yeah, exactly.
Well, how do you stay abreast of all of the varying, laws and regulations and?
You use outside counsel. You do, right? You have to use outside counsel. You have to be strategic about aligning yourself with good law firms who are knowledgeable in certain areas, in certain spaces, and they write summaries for you. They keep you abreast. You go and you do a lot of. So attorneys have something called continuing legal education credits. Yes. So we have to make sure we have a certain number of credits depending on what state we're barred in, to have a certain number of credits every year, every 2 years. And so when you work for a pharmaceutical company, you look for those that are really more aligned with what you do on a daily basis.
Yeah.
And there's some great tools and resources out there. And then, you just do a lot of reading yourself and making sure you stay abreast of things.
Wow.
And a lot of times with the law, it's not that the regulation changed, but there's new case law.
Yeah.
So there's a new investigation that led to a settlement or that led to a case, and here's some new rules now associated with that regulation because of the court case and the outcome of the court case. And so how do I apply that to how we do our business? Or how do I advise my business clients to say, you know, I know 5 years ago we used to do it this way, but there's been recent litigation, and there's been some new case law that came out that says we can't do it that way anymore. We have to do it in a different way. And so most of the clients internally, you know, they want to comply with the law. They want to get the products to the patients. They want to obviously make the company profitable, but they want to make sure that they're doing it within the parameters and the confines of the law. But sometimes, depending on the issue, like recently I had an issue where there was a few different laws that impacted it, right? So it was potential.
Contradictory, no doubt.
Some contradictory, but you know, where there was like an anti-kickback statute that I had to, aspect that I had to take into consideration, as well as the antitrust impact, you know. So the antitrust person gave me, you know, his take on the position, and the anti-kickback, you know, specialist gave me his, you know, take. And so I kind of had to figure out, can we do this? You know, I mean, I think we can, but there's a lot that you have to take into consideration. But outside counsel, going to continuing like legal education and also these other conferences, and then just making sure you stay abreast of what's out there. But because a transactional attorney drafts the document, which is the document that's drafted, really is after all the ancillary things have been managed, right? And how do I put it in an agreement that reflects everything that we've all agreed on? So we really are usually the last step in making sure that all the pieces are fitting together the right way. So, and other than agreements, it's, you know, that's why I mentioned protocols and informed consent and other documents that we review that are not just a contract, but a lot of things that either lead to the contract phase or that are related to the contract phase that I think people don't really realize. So, but we collaborate really well with our other colleagues in the legal group. So it's been a great ride. I've been at Celgene for 11 years, as Krista said, and it's been a great and very informative practice that I've had. So.
Okay. Well, any other questions for Teresia? And in walked Susan Bain, our Program Director of Clinical and Regulatory and Quality. Feel free to join us. Any other questions before we say farewell? Okay.
I hope it was helpful and interesting.
It was great. Oh, I hear something.
Hi, Teresia. This is Nick.
Hi, Nick. How are you?
They're doing good, Teresia. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thanks for the talk, Teresia. Very broad scenario of all sorts of legal considerations. I wanted to ask about orphan drug use and compassionate use, and pressure from advocacy groups.
Yeah.
How does that play out? How does responsibility in terms of patients' life when it's a life-threatening condition, orphan condition, patients have to have compassionate use drug. How does that pan out?
Yeah, so good question. So I was telling the short group earlier, Celgene started out as being the pharmaceutical company that brought thalidomide kind of under regulation. Thalidomide is used for, thalidomide has a really bad history with birth defects, but we actually started doing some research with it, and we realized that it was really helpful for leprosy patients. There's not a huge leprosy population in the U.S., but there are some pockets in the country where there's leprosy patients, and we pretty much provide the drug for free to them. So that's one of the things we do. We also do have quite a few. This is one of the things that comes through our medical affairs group is, especially in countries where we're not approved yet, our products are not approved, where we'll get a request from a physician to say, I have a patient with this disease. I think your product would be great. We can't get it in our country, or it's available in our country, but not for this indication. Would you mind sending me, some products so I can see if this is helpful for my patient? So that's called compassionate use. So what we will do is we will, depending on the situation, and there's an evaluation from a medical perspective, that's done is if we do allow that doctor to give that patient the product, we'll ask the doctor to make sure they continue to give us the data back from that, because it's not in an area that we're approved in or available, we want to make sure we understand how that patient is responding to the product. And sometimes that helps catapult us to think about, clinical trials in another area. There's also, in Europe especially, there's a lot, although we've gotten a lot of indications in Europe, and when I first started at Celgene, we were really still trying to, but some countries have named patient programs, so patients, so individual patients, again, we can get a request from them or their doctor, and we can get the product to them, and they actually will be, the government insurance will reimburse them or reimburse us for that product because they've been a named patient, and we have to write a mini protocol, or the doctor has to write a mini protocol for that patient on how it'll be used. We also started back in 2007 a global health initiative where we basically, our chief medical officer decided we had a lot of molecules on the shelf that we weren't using. We either had tried to use it for development in certain areas and it wasn't effective. And so we decided to just, table it. But he wanted to start using some of those molecules to see if we could start doing some research in some of these diseases of the developing world, these neglected diseases. So he's been doing a lot of work with a lot of institutions at a lot of countries outside the U.S. to see if we could be effective in, Sjogren's disease and some of these diseases where people are dying, children are dying, women are dying, but there could be potentially some medical help for that. So we've been doing that. We also have a great patient access program where we do want to help patients get access to our products. So if we have, a situation where a payer won't reimburse a patient or won't reimburse or pay for the cost, we have programs that will either determine if the patient, based on their income level, falls at a certain threshold, we'll offer that patient a free drug for a certain amount of time. We'll also help that patient find other means of coverage, if they're eligible for Medicare, Medicaid, or something else, or these new affordable care plans that have come up. We have a patient access group that really helps with helping patients get access. So either free drug, copay assistance, or helping them find other means to get support. We also give quite a bit charitably to a lot of these patient advocacy organizations. So we give them, a certain amount of money so that they have money to help patients access not only our products, but any products, depending on the disease area. And we're doing a lot more partnering with these organizations as well to help bring awareness to patients about, therapies, what's available, or just, how can you treat your disease. So those are kind of some of the things we've been doing for that question, Nick.
Great, thank you very much, Teresia.
Sure. Any one more question? Anyone? Okay, I think we're going to sign off then. Thank you for joining.
Hope it was informative for you all.
Yeah, please feel free to give feedback to me and spread the word, and hope to see you next time. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.